Here's the pitch. Oh, shit.
High, deep drive.
Welcome to the Objective Secure podcast. My name's Mike.
Hey, I'm Emma.
And this is episode 70. And here's the pitch. We're going to be trying to pitch this in such a way as to convince the significant others in our lives as to why this isn't a childish hobby and why it's good for you to keep playing or maybe start playing or return to playing. And we're not just talking 40k, we're talking any sort of tabletop and board gaming, RPGs, pretty much anything that involves the social interaction of human beings in the same room as each other, while enjoying a light-hearted, fun, non-stressful game of some kind, which instantly rules out Monopoly and Risk.
I've still never played Risk.
Yeah, well, that'll be one that'll quickly get added to the repertoire of no play in our house, I suspect.
I'm going to have to break it out so I can see how bad it really is. Yeah, so I guess the idea behind today's topic was we're heading into a new edition of 40k.
Yeah.
Now that I guess brings with it the fact that there's very little content being produced for us to be able to talk about for
it does make things
8th
interesting for us.
edition. So as we were sort of sitting brainstorming some different ideas, we were a little bit low on ideas for a topic for this. But something that I get asked often is how can I convince my wife to play or something like that. But what I also notice is that there is a significant amount of people, I can't say it's statistically significant because I haven't done the math. Perhaps you have. So there's a large number of people, and it's generally men who play this hobby. And so there's a large number of men who, when they find a significant other, their significant other is against them playing this hobby. And there's a lot of pressure for them to give it up because it's geeky or
childish.
Immature, childish. Grown men playing with toy soldiers might be something that I have mentioned a few times, or Michael's playing with his dollies. Generally, I'd say Michael's playing with his little men, which is also not okay. I say it with love and affection, though, right? So it's all good. So, kind of this idea around we wanted to talk about what are some of the things. I guess if you're in a position where you feel like you need to justify why you're playing this game, then we thought we might just touch on those. And for people who are perhaps thinking about coming back into the hobby, who may feel like they're in a position where they have to justify why they want to do this or why they want to continue playing or return to playing or start playing, this might be just a couple of thoughts on it, really. Not that we think that anybody should have to justify playing.
No. And I've got some thoughts around that and why it ties into where you are in your life and age and so on, but we'll talk about that in the topic. In the meantime, we have some bits and pieces that have been shown over the last 2 weeks since we recorded. Yeah. I'm going to cover two things that aren't on the list that I've just sent to Emma.
Oh, awesome. I love that.
Because these are only little sort of snippet things that I wanted to quickly touch on. We've seen a whole bunch of previews for the rules for 40k. You can head to the Warhammer community site and read all the snippets that they've done. Every single one of them has been met with a chorus of "This is fantastic," followed by "The world is ending."
Not necessarily followed by. I believe that
simultaneously, in conjunction with.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm not going to bore going through all the different articles they've published and all the rest of it. Go and check it out, Warhammer Community, warhammer-community.com. And if you click the show all news, you'll be able to scroll back through and find them all. They've previewed blasts, and they previewed a bit on tanks, and they preview a bit on line of sight and terrain, and the new flyer rules and all that sort of stuff.
And we did have a conversation around whether or not today's topic should be how to cope with anxiety with the lead up to...
I reckon we do that the week after 9th edition drops, because then everyone will have them in their hands and then all their fears are realised.
Or not.
Oh, well.
I think there's heightened anxiety at the moment. But we decided not to touch on that.
Yeah. We've had Engine War release, which we had our first event on Saturday with our Patrons Pod 2. They actually used Engine War as well. So we had... there was a Mechanicus player there and a Chaos Knights player, and obviously Demons as well. So we got to see some of the new Engine War stuff on the table, which was great. None of the new models. The Mechanicus army didn't feature any of the new stuff yet. It's a shame. I was talking about this with a friend. They're, the new cavalry that the AdMech get, they're really solid on the table. Particularly the rifle variant, the sort of the Ranger variant. They come in boxes of 3. And they might have even, I haven't worked it out exactly, but I think they might have pipped the Gene Stealer Colt in the worst point for dollar value in Australia now. Because to run the full 3 units of 9, 27 cavalry, it's about $880 for under 400 points. It's pretty horrific. And then you could, in theory, run the other variant of the cavalry in 3 more squads of 9. So you could easily be up for $2,000 Australian for under 1,000 points.
Ooh.
So I'm going to be interested to see, because I've seen a few people on the internet go, I take 27 of this or 20 of that, and I've gone, yeah, look, it's all well and good at saying that in theory, but...
Yeah, so if you're trying to convince your significant other...
Don't use those numbers.
Don't let them listen to
that.
this bit, okay? Be really selective about the part of this episode you get them to listen to.
We've also seen the previews for War of the Spider, which is the next Psychic Lightning book that'll go up for pre-order this weekend, which is Fabius Bile and the book, as far as I can tell. I don't think there's any other miniature releases that are attached to it. Obviously, we're getting rules for the Custodes, the Sisters of Silence, the Assassins, the Death Guard are getting new stuff, and most of it's been previewed, and there's a few leaks starting to appear in the community now where you can actually, if you go looking, you can find most of the rules either screenshotted from the book or sort of typed out from people's notes. The second thing I wanted to cover very quickly is the Lumineth for Age of Sigmar. I've seen it in multiple non-Australian Facebook groups now that the box set will be available very shortly. And then I've seen this morning that they've now got a preview of it and so on the community page. So clearly the cat's out of the bag. That'll be up for pre-order this weekend. I honestly thought this was going to be what got me into Age of Sigmar, and it's not.
Disappointed?
Yep. I'm now, like, the box that they're releasing is meant to be a limited edition because it's got a different book, a different cover art, and you get all the miniatures up front.
If anything's going to get you into it, it's going to be a limited edition, whatever.
Well, so this has got special dice, special cards, a new version of the book, and you get all the miniatures, obviously, early, because they're not going to be available separately in the short term.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, I want to see what's in the book before I commit any money to it. So, yeah, the locking it all behind a single box set where I can't engage and see what else is in the book, it's going to mean I don't sort of invest in that as heavily. Certainly not in the short term.
Yeah.
For those of you who are keen, the miniatures that are actually in the box, ironically, are ones I would probably use because they're the core units, the cavalry, the spearmen, the Light of Eltharion, and a character. Although he may be a spearman champion now I look at the box a bit closer. I'm hoping that there are people out there who go out and buy multiples of this box because they want to build the army immediately, and then they just sell the book and the Light of Eltharion and the bits I want out of it, like much like the Sisters of Battle box. Because then I'd be happy in buying bits rather than having to invest in the whole thing, and the risk is lower for me. So I do feel like this is a release they've done. They've put it out there, and it's not complete. It's a low, from everything we've seen in the White Dwarf, it's a very low unit range in terms of the production. Like, it doesn't include the entire faction. There's like 9 units or 8 units or something, and that's a bit disappointing.
Yeah. So
we'll see. But we might as well move on to the big 2 that we have had released.
Yep.
So on Saturday they did the live stream, Saturday night, local time. For the What's in the Box for the new Indomitus Warhammer 40,000 box set.
Yep, I was just having a look at this.
Now, a couple of things. So there's, again, you can go and check it out. There'll be links in the show notes to go and watch the videos and follow us along if you're interested. If you're listening and you play 40k, you've probably already seen this.
I'd say highly likely. Most people have already seen it.
Yep. Now, the stream said there's a picture of everything you get. So there's bikes, there's multiple characters, there's a big squad of Intercessor Assault models, there's the new Eradicators, and then on the Necron side, there's big units of warriors, there's characters, there's a big walkery thing, there's Scorptech Destroyers. So that's this is the new box.
Yeah.
But it's a limited release box. It's not the starter box.
Ah.
So this is like a splash release, again, with a limited edition cover art on the rulebook, because you do get a rulebook in it, but they don't give you dice and measuring stuff. And they say, we're not giving that to you because you probably already have
I was
that.
going to say I quite like that.
So it'll be interesting to see what gets taken out of this to form the core box, because obviously they go on to say that the entire box is also snap fit.
Ah.
Which is what those starter boxes have been for.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's not a starter box.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, this looks like it's going to be most, like, what's in this is going to be, like, they're going to trim it down to make the starter box. And I'm not quite sure
or
how.
Potentially add to it by adding in.
Oh, no, I reckon they'll trim this down, because they reckon this box is going to be, if you buy it, instead of buying it all individually like they've priced it, and they haven't showed us any prices, they reckon it's more than a 50% saving to buy it as it is here rather than buying it separately. Which horrifies me, because I'm betting this box in Australia is going to be anywhere from $300 to $500.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
My gut instinct was 3.
Well, Blood of the Phoenix was $400 for less models than this.
Yeah.
And no hardback rulebook. And like, that doesn't fill me with a great deal of confidence. If this is going to go for £200, then we're talking 500 Australian dollars. And don't get me wrong, the kits are amazing, which we'll cover in a second. But as a consumer and someone who's already invested in the game and wants the rulebook day one, if they don't release the rulebook separately, I'm in a position where, like, I look at it and I go, yeah, look, the Space Marines, our son plays Space Marines. You know, there's $250 worth of Space Marines. That's a lot of gardening he's going to have to do to earn those.
It's a lot, yeah.
And I've got a Necron army.
I need a new car.
Yeah.
I'll do a whole heap of gardening. It's not going to get me a car.
No. So, yeah, I'm hopeful that I'm really torn with this box, because they're two factions that I don't really care about.
No, I'm just scrolling through, looking at it, going, yeah.
They're cool models.
Nah, it doesn't fill me with
Well,
excitement.
let's have a quick look at the models then, because we'll start with the Angels of Death, the Indominus Crusade Space Marines. So the Primaris Captain with the shield and sword.
Here's the problem. I don't like Space Marines.
Oh, that is true. I want you to have a quick look at this model and then the Lieutenant, which is the next one after it, with the Volkite pistol on the shield. Where is your eye drawn to on that Captain?
I guess the shield.
So most people have said the shield, which is ironic with the shield in and of itself, because it's meant to be a Space Marine.
Actually, it's not. My eye is drawn to the cross thing that's hanging on his belt, pointing down to whatever's on the floor at him.
The dead Necron, yeah.
Yeah, that's where my eye
So
is
the
drawn
tabard
to.
is the other one that I've heard people say a lot of, and it's because of the way it's around his waist where the belt
It's
is.
cinched in a little bit weird, isn't it?
Well, he's also wearing armor, and that's...
Well, and funnily enough, so on the Lieutenant...
It looks like he's got a baggy top
On the Lieutenant, I was definitely drawn to that.
Yeah.
Right. It does look...
It doesn't look
a
right.
bit potato sack-ish.
Yeah, it doesn't look right, does it?
Yeah.
And it could just be the colour scheme they've chosen, but I don't understand why... Like, they're
Well,
wearing...
it's a bit odd, isn't it, that they do have their midriff
Yeah.
not covered in
So there is either
in armour.
But if there's power armor under there, then it's
Why
not...
do you need the armour on top?
It's not cinched right. It doesn't look right. I do like the fact that the captain's face mask has the visor lifted, so it's showing a different way of the helmet operating. And apparently he does have... It's more like a knight's helmet, so it swings up.
Yeah.
Apparently he does have a different head option as well, if you don't like that helmet. Interesting fact as well, the dead skeleton on his shield is meant to be a dead Space Marine. Space Marines don't have ribs. They're all fused together when they become Space Marines to form like a shell around their internal organs. So I think there's a bit of poetic license being made there to show it as a skeleton rather than... Like, that wouldn't look the same if you just had these big solid slabs of unsculpted detail.
Well, I think it would because you've got the skull and the arm.
I think if we photoshopped it and mucked about with it, you'd lose something if those were just solid flat colours. Anyway, I actually quite like the captain. I'm less sold on the lieutenant.
Yeah.
The chap.
That's really weird. It's like they're wearing crop tops.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It's very. It feels like 80s.
The good.
I've kind of got this thing of some, with a mullet haircut and, a bit of a crop top happening and some whitewashed denim jeans. I can see that.
Well, the best part about this is with these kits released, we're obviously going to get data sheets in this box set. And with the release of it, it's going to mean you can convert your own Primaris captains to have swords and shields and not use this model. The fact that there will be rules for it will allow you, if you don't like the model, to not use it. Scrolling down, though, the chaplain is the third image. Again, ignoring the weird waist with the...
I should probably stop Googling Jason Donovan 1980,
Yes.
shouldn't I? So I can focus on... Yeah, okay.
So the chaplain shows a little bit more. You can actually see the armour above his...
I pressed the wrong button and started Googling. Okay, I'm back
it'd
there.
be
I'm
his,
focused.
It'd be his right, our left hip. You can actually see that there's black armour on the right hand, like under the tabard, which I think adds... So you can kind of see that it's ornamental, but again, it's just a weird...
That's also how it's been painted. If you painted that flesh colour, it would look like you had flesh underneath
That is true. These are very Black Templary knight, like that sort of Templary crusading style, which is obviously they're the Indomitus Crusade Marines, so they have lent heavily into that knight imagery for these models.
Yeah, and the next model is my favourite.
The Judicia.
You'll notice I went with the next model rather than trying to pronounce that, because,
The Judicia is the way they pronounced it on the live stream. I don't like the head. I think it's a helmet.
I kind of do.
I think it's a helmet.
Yeah.
And if it is a helmet, then I'll change my opinion. But if it's a bare head...
I like the head of the Primaris chaplain.
The chaplain's amazing. I really like that model, other than that weird tabardy thing.
Yeah.
I actually thought that was going to be the Primaris version of Chaplain Cassius, because Chaplain Cassius has a bionic half of the head.
Yeah.
We've seen his model and rules and history evolve over the game since 4th edition, I think was when he was released.
There is something that is... I am really drawn to the...
Judicia.
Judicia? However you...
Judicia. I'm going to go with Judicia.
And it's a shame that people can't see the face you're pulling while you're trying to say that.
It's like a donkey chewing a caramel.
Yeah, actually, that's a good description. Yeah, I really like that model.
It's been quite...
actually any good? Do you know?
No idea. I haven't seen the rules for it.
Shame.
I've seen a few memes generated from it. That the square-edged sword has had a lot of people draw parallels to anime, because there's a lot of anime characters that have those big wedge-shaped blades.
Yeah.
Silent Hill had something similar as well for one of the bad guys. I do think it's a very imposing, scary... Like, it's meant to be an executioner-style character, and I think it works really well in that. I mean, it's got Terminus written into the sword, for Christ's sake. I can't see what the second word is, but the top word is definitely Terminus. So, of the 4 characters, so it's 5 characters. This one's probably... I like the Chaplain more than him, but he's a close second. Then we get the Blade Guard veterans, which are, again, wearing the tabardy...
Can't stop looking at this one. All right, I'll focus.
Storm Shields, Power Swords, again. If you don't like these models, you're going to be able to make your own out of intercessors, and even using the new Assault intercessors, it'll be easy to swap those...
I like the shields.
Well, it'll be easy to kit bash the shields onto Assault intercessors if you don't like the style of their armour. And I can see plenty of people doing that, because if you've...
those puffy tabards.
If you've got Terminators in your Space Marines at all, you will have spare Storm Shields and spare blades and that sort of stuff. So getting intercessors and doing weapon swaps won't be a big stretch. We also get the Blade Guard Ancient.
I quite like this one as well.
So this is a much more holy knight for me. If you look at the tone they've painted him in, he's a much whiter... Like, all of his cloths are a very pale beige rather than being dirty and yellow. He looks holier. Even down to the fact he's actually got that collar, that white collar around his helmet. No visible weapons, which is interesting. So I don't know what that's going to mean in the game. Again, he's a cool model. They still don't have...
I wonder if that's... Do you think it's a model on his hip behind the left hip? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, look, there could be something like backpack, like a pouch or a pistol or something there. There is a comment in the bit below it that says... we don't know about you, but even without any obvious weapons, we reckon he'll be pretty handy in a fight. And then obviously he's got that skeletal hand on a chain. So whether these got some special rules for that, and it looks like there are digital lasers on the knuckles of that hand. So he could have some swanky Hand of Doom attack. Then we get the Eradicators, which are basically modified Gravis armor. Well, they are Gravis armor, so they're akin to the Aggressors, but these are carrying long-range melter guns.
They bore me.
Melter rifles, I think they've called them. It'll be interesting to see how they perform on the table, because at the moment, the one-shot melter weapons aren't exactly in vogue for the game, so maybe Ninth will change that. I've already seen people kit bashing these, because they know what, like, they're Gravis armor, so you can use Aggressor parts, so you can kind of build them relatively easily from kit bash.
Yeah.
But they are probably the least interesting of the range. The Assault Intercessor Squad, so you get a full 10-man squad. I reckon these will become the Blade Veterans very easily if you wanted them with swords and shields. Like, changing these models over to swords and shields would be a doddle. It'd be a piece of cake. It's the same unit twice. It's 2 squads of 5. You can see it clearly. There's a double up.
Not too clearly, because you got the guy at the front.
The two at the front, the one with the shield on his shoulder and the either the plasma or the Volkite pistol, compared to the one with an open hand, you can still see that's exactly the same kit. You can see it's the same body, the same.
Yeah.
It's just 2 different arms.
I'm just looking at the one with and I know that it's just a head swap, but you've got the one at the front with no helmet.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Those 2 at the front, bottom right and bottom center, are exactly the same model. They're just arm swaps and a head swap.
Okay, I was actually looking at bottom right and bottom left.
So...
But yeah, no, they are different.
The bottom left, if you have a look, is mirrored on the top left. So they are 2 squads. It's basically the same squad twice. Then we get the Outriders, which are the new Space Marine bikes. I've seen a lot of people complaining about the ground clearance on these things.
Why?
They don't have any.
Oh, right, okay.
I really like the style of the bike. They're very... Judge Dredd is the best description I can give for them. They're very 2000 AD military bike rather than a bike they've strapped guns to. They feel like they're a military vehicle. I will also think that they're intended that the front wheel can be like you can angle the front wheel to lift the ground clearance a little bit.
It does look like that would drop down almost.
Yeah. So I love the style of them. I've seen a lot of people complain that they aren't grav bikes, like jet bikes. But I think it's important to keep them on the ground to make sure that the Space Marines aren't just better Eldar, which sadly there are a few units that feel like that now. But I think of all the standard kits in this box, the bikes are right up there in terms of... They're certainly the best Marine unit in the box for me. I really like them. Then we get the Necrons. I love the video for the Necrons. Go and check that out. We get the new Necron Overlord with his tachyon arrow and his new weapon called a Hyperphase Glaive. What's interesting about this model is I think we're going to see the phase out, pun intended, of the Necron special characters. Anything that's in Finecast that isn't in the new codex, I suspect is just going to be put into Legends and left alone. And it's interesting because Anrakia the Traveller is armed exactly the same as this guy, who was a named character. So part of me wonders whether we're going to see some named characters disappear, or we're going to see plastic characters that can be used as those characters appear. I really like this look. I think it's a great heavy-duty looking model. Only eclipsed by the Warden, who is the next model we get.
Yeah.
I think the Warden has a lot of menace to him. He's not perfect. Like, he's got chinks and chips in his armor and he's got dings in him, whereas the Overlord has less of those. I really like the Warden. The Plasmancer, who has no legs.
Yeah, I was literally just looking at that.
I really love the way they've gone down this sort of Lovecraftian horror for the Necrons. It used to be this weird Egyptian, like, undead theme.
Yeah.
And they've clearly gone, you know what, this aesthetic isn't working for Grimdark. Let's go down another direction and let's make them creepy, like, horror robots rather than, like, Egyptian robots. And I really like it. The Crypto Thralls are little weird, creepy gremlin scythe arm things. Then we get the Scorptech Lord, which is really cool. Scorpec.
Scorpec. Yeah.
Lord. It's the size of a dreadnought, apparently. It's a big model. They describe it as the final boss from the cinematic trailer. So, I really like that model. Big fan. And then you get the destroyers, the smaller versions, which are kind of Terminator-sized, with 3 limbs that scuttle across the table.
They seem... I'm finding that the Scorpec seem almost more humanised. I suppose the Warden does a little bit as well. I think maybe it is just the Plasmancer and the Cryptothralls. Their faces don't seem as face-like, whereas by the time you get down to the Scorpec destroyers, they've actually got
they do have
clearly
faces.
identifiable faces.
Well, the Necronoid were originally organic beings, and then they got tricked into taking their consciousnesses and putting them into robots. So they made the robots in their own image so that when they put the general population into the bodies, they would feel like they belonged. Of course, that wasn't what happened because the higher powers that orchestrated it didn't let it go that way.
Yeah, by the time you get down to the Scorpec destroyers, it looks almost like a cross between a crab and a...
Yeah. They got blades for arms and all sorts.
And their legs look crabbish.
Well, that's kind of a running
claws.
theme for some of the other units from the Canoptek range for the Necrons. We get the Plasmacyte, which is this weird bug creature, and then the Canoptek Reanimator, which is, again, a very Triffid War of the Worlds vibe happening. And then we get the new Scarab bases as well, which actually look like flying little beetles as opposed to the weird sort of grub versions we had from 3rd edition. We also get the new Necron Warrior range. These models have been a bit polarizing for players. Who would have thought it? So we get a new weapon variant. So we've got the Gorse Flayer, and then we get the new Gorse Reaper, which is the dual-barreled version of the single-barrel weapon. What's interesting about these are kind of the lowest of the low when it comes into the Necron hierarchy. So these would have been the civilian population became these. And if you look at them, there's cabling hanging out of their torsos, there's like damage to their skulls, there's jaws that don't line up, there's some that don't have bottom jaws. Like, these are clearly the ones that are the most worn.
Yeah.
Like, there's armor panels missing off one of them for his upper arm and his forearm. So it's interesting that they've shown there's a progression within their sort of the hierarchy of the Necrons where, the lowest of the low don't get the same repairs and the same maintenance as the pinnacle. And I like that sort of storytelling within the army without you having to do much. And I think the way they've painted them with that bronze metallic armor really helps that. So, and then, we get the collectible Indomitus Edition rulebook. Although, sorry, they call it the core book, which I don't know what to think about that terminology.
But they use core book elsewhere.
For a lot of other games too, yeah. It does say it includes the advanced rules. It includes
Well, it doesn't
games
say they include the advanced rules. It says includes more advanced rules.
Making battle-forged armies, playing games of different sizes. It includes the new Crusade system. So it'll be interesting to see whether it is the full... I would hope for this box it would be the full rulebook, because the players who are going to be buying this box are going to want it to be the full rulebook. So... and then we also get the Edge of Silence as well, which is the last book in the box, which is all the data sheets.
It certainly makes it sound as though when this is released, we're going to have... Your option are going to be buy this or wait until the rule book is released. So it says Indomitus. Anyway, I can't get it out. Indomitus is the first best way to get your hands on this essential gobsmacking new core book.
And the only way to get it with a special edition launch cover.
Yeah. And, I mean, for me, the cover doesn't matter. For you, I know it does.
Ironically, I don't, depending on, I haven't seen the cover for the standard book.
The other one, yeah, exactly.
And you know what? My biggest question with this rule book is it better have the digital code on the inside of it to go with the day one app that they're talking about, because apparently all the new books are going to have the free digital downloads.
Yeah.
This book had better launch at the same time as the app and have the code in it to let you get access to it digitally. That'd be my one. Please don't screw that up.
See, for me, I just think please, and I know that I'm falling down the trap that we ask other people not to, but please don't put it out as a $500 box set, and that's the only way that you can get the new core rules. Otherwise, you have to wait a month or 2 months or 3 months to get the core rules by itself.
Look, a week I would be fine with. If they released it and said the official release of 40K is next week, but we're going to give you the option to buy this book today, the box set today, a week I'd live with. Anything longer than a week just reeks of corporate, I want you to buy this box.
Yeah, exactly.
Before I give you the books as a standalone.
And I was struggling with even a week, because if you're releasing it today, I want to be able to buy the book by itself today so I can play. I don't need $500 worth of model or $1,000 worth of models, because we've got a dungeon full of them. And the way that you said it would be a good marketing promotion. The official launch of 9th is next week. However, pre-order, buy this box and you can get it a week early.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're just...
That's pure speculation. That's what I do as a marketing spin.
Yeah.
So The Edge of Silence is the other book, which gives you all the data sheets for all the new units, as well as some of the narrative stuff, which I'm assuming will also include stuff for the Crusade system that'll let you do special things for the campaign that it's set for, the Pariah Nexus. And then you obviously get the new transfer sheets and the new assembly guides and all that sort of bits and pieces. So it's a very big book, a very big box. So it's 61 push fit miniatures, the core book, the assembly guide, the transfer sheet, and the campaign book. It's a big kit. Yeah. 61 models is a lot for any of the start. I'm trying to think back through the other starter boxes. I don't know any of them had that many models in them. I mean, the Dark Vengeance had the Chaos Cultists in it. That might have had close to 61 models. But yeah, it's certainly an impressive box, and I'm sure that the price tag will be equally impressive. So at the end of the live stream, they went, "Oh, we've got one more thing to show you. Check this video out." And they published the video, and then the link showed up about 5 minutes later on the community site, which is called Beyond the Box.
Yeah.
So they gave us more videos, and they gave us 4 new units, 2 Space Marine and 2 Necron straight away. The Invader ATV.
Yep.
What do you think? I'm going to sit on one side of the fence here and say it's frickin' ugly. I don't like it at all.
It doesn't excite me, but it's not the ugliest thing that I've seen.
No, they have done work, and they have this habit of taking the worst photographs of these models when they deep etch them onto a white background. So who knows what it actually looks like from all angles. But I really don't like this kit at all. And it's been a very you either like it or you don't type thing from the community. So
it's an interesting model. It's an interesting concept.
Well, I shared it with a white.
Do they have any other ATVs?
No. Oh, so the Outrider, the new bikes are replacing the old Space Marine bikes. Sorry, we're totally not phasing out the old Space Marines, but these are the Primaris versions of that unit. This is essentially the Primaris version of the attack bike from the standard Space Marine range, which was a sidecar for a motorbike.
Okay.
So this is kind of adapting that sidecar version and turning it into more of a a gun on the back of a ute.
It feels like the front end of a tank's been cut off.
It does. Like that front section's just missing a wall of armor. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't feel complete at the front.
But obviously that's to give him space to sit. So it's just...
I don't know. It's an interesting set of design choices there.
It is.
And at least you can see it belongs in the Space Marine range. The way the armor's shaped and all the aesthetics, at least it
Yeah.
ties in. But yeah, it's not.
It just feels like what a 15-year-old should be riding around on sand dunes, to be fair. I mean, probably without the giant
minigun?
gun on the top.
Yeah. Then we get the Fire Strike servo turret. Another interesting kit. I get why it looks the way it looks from an aesthetic point of view. It makes total sense the way it's been designed. I have to complain though that why would you put a giant?
You don't have to complain,
I'm going
you're
to.
choosing to.
Why would you make a giant slab of armor and then put the ammo feeds and the ejection ports for the guns on the outside of the shield, where if something jams or you need to change and fix something, or you take incoming fire, where do you not want to be? In front of that shield, dealing with those issues as and when they happen. Now, I'm a civilian. I've never been part of the military or anything like that, and I can look at that and go, that's a poor place to put those things.
Yes, however, somebody who has been in the military may go, oh, no, there's a good reason for that. Like,
If there is, I'd love to
Well,
hear it, but
you
it doesn't
kind
make
of-
any sense to me.
I can kind of see as far as the, what do you call it, where the shells...
Ejection port.
Ejection port. I can kind of see, I mean, he's in full armour, but if they're coming pinging out at you, they're hot.
They are.
So I've been burnt by...
But at the same time, that's also where the jams occur.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
And I'm assuming it was designed like this because it's cool, and you get to see the
Yeah.
ammo. Like from a cool
Design
aesthetic
aesthetic.
point of view, yeah, I totally get why it looks like it does. But the practical side of me goes, move the shield forward and give us that detail at the back to show the forethought. But yeah, they've done it. The fact that it's a Tech Marine is interesting as well, because we haven't had a proper Primaris Tech Marine yet. So he's in. You can see his mouth plate and his shoulder pad, and
Yeah.
he's got the bionic arm as well. You can kind of see on the side
Yeah.
there. So the Primaris Tech Marines are now incoming, and then we get the Necron stuff, which again goes back to their horror variants. So we got the Locust Heavy Destroyer.
I quite like that.
He's quite round
He is.
on the bottom.
Yeah, yep, he is. He does look like he's got his MC Hammer pants on.
Yep. He is Grav though, so he doesn't have any feet.
Yeah.
So he might not hammer dance as well as he might had he had feet. Apparently, there's a weapon variant as well for it, so it'll get a slightly different gun option. It looks like he's got two arms on his left, our right, because he's got a supporting arm that comes
I
out
see that now.
to the main barrel, and he's got what looks like fingers touching the top of the gun. So again, keen to see this from other angles, but by and large, I think I like this model.
I do.
The one I really like though is the Canoptek Doomstalker. Again, it's that sort of War of the Worlds creepy, spindly, walkery thing happening. I like that it's got the Doomsday gun on this is called the Doomsday Blaster, which is not the same as the Doomsday Arcs gun, but it's got the same design choices on it. It's got the Canoptek Wraith and the Scarab head, which again ties it in well to that range.
I like the sound of unleash its full cataclysmic potential.
It's a good marketing line, isn't it?
That sound so much better than gobsmacking, which is an earlier marketing line. Not that there's something, nothing wrong with a good gobsmacking excitement.
Oh Jesus,
but
that's something that's going to be taken out of context.
Well, it shouldn't be.
This is my favourite of these four kits that they've
thought
previewed.
The favourite was going to be the Gav Thorpe novel that was underneath.
Look, there is a novel, The Indomitus, which I've seen already people complaining about because why do we want to read about something that's already happened? Like the Horus Heresy series isn't a thing. Like the Babab Wars haven't been a thing. Like every other 40k novel that deals with the past that they've published for the last 30 years hasn't been a thing.
I suppose that's kind of the whole... Depends what elements of the hobby you're choosing to participate in. For some people, reading that is part of the hobby that they enjoy, and for other people, they're not interested in it.
So the Indomitus
Which is what you
Crusade
like.
happened in 8th edition. It was part when Guilliman came back to the Imperium and raised the Primaris and went on his crusade across the galaxy. So this is kind of filling in those gaps with what that... Like, they kind of gave us 3 paragraphs of it in the rulebook and went, that's what happened. So this is them take exactly like they did with the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy was never the 90 novel... It's probably 60, to be fair. Sprawling epic of novels by dozens of authors across a decade. It was 3 throwaway paragraphs in a rulebook from the 1980s, and it's over the last 30 plus years evolved into what it is today. This is that same process, except instead of waiting 30 years to expand on it, they've gone, cool, we published that 3 years ago, let's show what that means.
Yeah.
So, and Gav Thorpe, I generally enjoy Gav Thorpe's writing style.
Yes.
Generally speaking. So
Apart from... No, I'm just kidding.
No, look, I mean, every author has those books where you don't quite get, as invested in it as others. Except Aaron Densky Bowden. Like, I've loved everything I've read of his. But in general, this should be a good book. I haven't got a copy, I haven't read it, but I'd be interested to read
Based
it.
purely on the author's name and the cover art.
Well, Gav's been with Games Workshop since as long as I can remember. We met him in Nottingham. I met him in Nottingham back in 2002. And when I mentioned Dark Elves, his face flickered for that moment of, oh God, please don't complain about the army book. Please don't complain about the army book. So, lovely man though. Nice to chat to. So that's all the previews for Warhammer 40,000. The most interesting part of all of that, for anyone who's not interested in Space Marines and Necrons, is the July release, which was hinted at in, I think, the main article.
Yeah.
It says release this July. Now, I'd put my money on the end of June. Clearly, that's not going to happen if they're saying July for the box. But with War of the Spider up for pre-order this weekend on the 20th, and then released on the 27th, I would assume that pre-order for the Indomitus box won't be far away now. Like, if they've given us the full lowdown of what's in the box and shown us all the artwork and all the pretty pictures, they're not going to want to sit on that for too long.
Yeah.
It could even be a 2-week pre-order starting this weekend. Although I wouldn't think so. I would think they'd go pre-order War of the Spider, and then on the 27th go, here's your pre-order date.
Yeah.
Get it in 2 weeks. And if that's the case, then, like I say, I'm hoping they have options. Otherwise, I might have to sell some toys to be able to pre-order the box. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So yeah, lots happening in the world of Games Workshop at the moment.
Yeah, so remember when we were talking about this episode and said, I'm not 100% sure that there's anything new for us to talk about that we could fill an hour's episode with? Are you sure?
No, look, I know what the intros are like. Like, I know what the...
They're getting longer and longer
No,
and
they're
longer.
not. This is short. This is only like 40 minutes.
Yeah, remember when we first started and our
15
intro
minutes?
was 10?
Yeah, but we're also doing hour episodes then, and the overwhelming feedback has been longer than hour episodes.
Okay, we've got feedback from 2 people.
No, it's from more than 2 people. We've had plenty of people ask for 3-hour marathons, and neither of us are up for that. But sort of hour and a half, hour and 40, 2 hours is probably a good number and round number for us.
Right, well, we've managed to knock off the intro, and now we have to go get our kids from school. So we'll be back in a couple of hours to finish off.
But for you guys, you've got to wait about 15 seconds because we'll be back in just a
Listen
second.
to this cute little ditty, and
we'll be back to talk topic. So, it's Men's Health Week, apparently, we've discovered today in the research.
Well, we haven't discovered today. We knew that it was Men's Health Week. And part of that...
I didn't.
Oh, well, I did and shared it with you. How's that?
Yeah,
so
okay.
I guess that's how you discovered it when I told you in the research that I did.
Yep.
How much research have you done? I'm going to stop. Okay, so part of it being Men's Health Week, I guess, and the link with that is whether you are a man who's trying to share some of the health benefits of this with your partner because you would like to go back to the hobby or continue to participate in the hobby or start in the hobby, or whether you are a woman who is trying to convince a man that this is a great hobby for him or for you, or really just because it's a tenuous link and we thought we'd throw it in there. And men should be healthy too. How's that?
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to stop because this research we've done, I'd like to know what your research is.
No. This is your topic. I'm just the one to bounce ideas off as you spit out the ideas.
This is my topic, is it?
Yeah. I do all the research for the gaming stuff. This is...
What research do you do?
I do plenty of it. It's not my fault you don't look at it.
It's not research. All right. So we're talking about, I guess, benefits of hobby.
Yeah. From a relationship
Psychosocial.
perspective in regards to not necessarily convincing your partner, but at least giving them more information on some of the opportunities and benefits it presents rather than just looking at the cost from a financial.
Well, it's not even just the cost from a financial perspective. I think that it's this hobby. Well, before we were talking about it, I said to you that we have a few friends who, when they have partnered, it has been very, very strongly pushed that they should leave the hobby.
Yeah.
In favour of a sexier hobby.
Yeah, basically.
And I'm using that term, I guess, to mean something that's more socially acceptable.
And admittedly, the references that we were having and the conversation we were having was around. It was about people from years gone by, and the culture has definitely changed over the last 20 years to be more accepting of this than it certainly was when I was a kid.
Most definitely, and I think that, and I mean, I
Even when
honestly
we
do
met.
mean this with love and affection. When I talk about geek culture and nerd culture becoming much more socially accepted, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Things like the Marvel movies.
And one of our children is very proud to have that as part of an identifying part of her persona, is that she calls herself a geek or a nerd, and she's proud of that. So it's not. I think that it's not something to be ashamed of, like perhaps when we were growing up.
Yeah.
So it has changed. I'm aware that it's changed, but I still think that I'm not sure that there's anything that we can do to make this a sexy hobby. You can spin it as much as you want. We're not going to make it sexy, but what we can do is highlight some of the real positives of this hobby.
I'm trying to, in my head, rationalise. So the comment about sexy hobby. How is golf sexier?
Yeah, I'm going to struggle with that.
Yeah, but that's
and same as football. I don't find, because I'm not a sporty person.
No. But I mean, a lot of the time, those sorts of...
I guess you think things like car racing or Muay Thai boxing or something like that, where you've kind of got the bad boy type danger.
You're talking about
elements.
testosterone at this point.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
certainly
But
what
I think it's the kind of the dangerous element to it that makes it.
Have you seen what you're like with super glue? You could be stuck to anything.
Do you know, today I went out and I was taping a building up to take some photos for something for an augmented reality project. I managed to stick my fingers together with painter's tape.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Do you think, honestly,
The only reason you don't stick to plastic models is it's plastic glue. It doesn't bond.
And I'm grateful. I was so proud of taping this thing up, right? Pulled the tape off the wall, scrunched it up in a ball, managed to stick my fingers in the middle, couldn't work out how to get them out. So you're right. There are definitely dangers. And some of us experience those dangers more than others. So I don't know why.
I get what you're saying. There's certainly there's a level of social standing attached to those other traditional pursuits in terms of the sporting aspects of it and the physical aspects of it.
It's the cultural norms.
Yeah.
So why is golf sexy? Because what does golf bring with it? Golf generally means
Wealth and privilege and
all of those things.
yeah, country clubs and that sort of.
What does football bring with it? Well, that's the sporting prowess which Australia holds in really high esteem.
Yeah.
What does surfing hold with it? Well, that's, so it's different things. And, we joke and say that you can't make this hobby sexy. It's not, it's just because at the moment our cultural norms aren't saying that tabletop gaming is
Well, when you part of it's also the word gaming, where it's attached to video gaming, and the video gaming, despite the industry having grown significantly, hugely over the recent history, it's still one of those maligned hobbies in terms of, like, there's more women playing at the moment, there's more adults playing at the moment, which is great. But it's still, when you say, I play video games, and you're a 40-year-old person...
Or even a teenager.
Yeah, it's still... I think teenagers get away with it a lot more these days.
I don't think they do.
I think there's a trip over when you become an adult, or a perceived adult, like 30-something or more.
No, I don't think so. I think most people see... not most people. I think that there's a perception that playing video games is a waste of time. If you play video games, you're more likely to be violent, all of those things, despite the fact that the research shows that, and some of the things I'm probably going to talk about in a minute to do with playing tabletop games as well, but the research shows that if you play video games, you're more likely to have faster reaction times, you're more likely to have better hand-eye coordination. They're using video games to train surgeons to be able to do the operations using the what are those machines called with the little micro thingies. I'm sure there's a word for that, but I wasn't planning on talking about it, so I didn't look what it was. So fighter pilots train using video games, all of those kind of things where there's huge benefits for playing video games. Now, I don't think that a 56-year-old balding man with a paunch is likely to suddenly become a high-level neurosurgeon and need to use whatever skills no one's going to call on him because the president of America needs to have
open heart surgery.
That's it.
Well, there have been instances of people landing planes through being talked over the radio down by the air traffic control and having.
I'm not sure there are.
There are.
I'm not sure there are.
Guarantee there are.
Having read a couple of different things about that.
Don't get me wrong, the plane does a lot for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I say, the familiarity, not solely on the basis of being able to play the video game, but there is benefit to it in having experience and exposure.
There's definitely benefits to it. We just still, at the moment, we're still in a time where people see
games
as, I don't know whether socially unacceptable is the right term, but they're not held in as high esteem as, for example, sports.
Yeah, which is ironically, sports are games.
Yes,
it's just a different type.
It's cosplay games.
Yeah,
and people dress up in there.
And I've said that to a few people where I've gone like, "How is it?" So I watching the LVO final at Varsity this year in January at the bar. I had some non-gamer people say to me, "Oh, you're going to go and watch a board game on a big screen." I've gone, "Well, how is it any different to watching a football game on the big screen?" They're both games. There are two people in a contest to determine who the winner is. How is it any different? And when you actually break it down...
In all fairness, I wouldn't do either.
No, but it's interesting that there's still that social negativity attached to it because, one, sports are still a game. It is still a competitive game. No one set out to make the Australian Football League, like the Aussie rules of football, into what it is today. They made a game to play it. This is no different. So, but there is a level of expectation around what the two of them represent, culturally speaking.
Yeah. So I guess the purpose of this is to kind of discuss some of the positives. And this came about for me because coming to events, and I am honest and will say that I would laugh and joke and say that Mike was going out to play with his toy soldiers. And I didn't really think of it as any more than that until we started the events and more often, and I started seeing some of the different benefits of these. But I've worked in mental health for the last 17 years. So I think I'm probably more attuned to noticing those things than the average person who's coming to play.
Yeah, probably. And certainly from any partners that they might have that aren't seeing that in the bigger picture.
Yeah. So I guess I just thought it would be worth possibly mentioning it.
Yeah.
All right. So what would you say the biggest positive is?
I actually think it's more to do with the community and the social support around the outside of that.
Yeah.
Because I can go to a tournament anywhere in Perth, and probably a good fair few on the east coast of Australia personally, and that's purely because of my relationships that I have, which ironically were formed at events where I didn't know anyone and then got to know people. I can walk into a room where I haven't seen someone across the table in a year or more and pick back up and have a common point of reference and be able to talk and chat and start developing a relationship with them, whether it's a first-person interaction or, you know, an old one I'm picking back up or someone that I see regularly. There's always a point of commonality.
Yeah. So this hobby, and whether that's 40K, AOS, bolt action, whatever tabletop game you choose to play. So there are many different elements to the hobby. So one of the elements of it is to actually play games and creating that social connection. And social connection with community and for that sense of belonging is really important. But also just having face-to-face contact with one other person can be really helpful. So face-to-face contact can actually trigger the neurotransmitters in your brain that are responsible for regulating stress and anxiety. So what that does is it actually reduces stress and anxiety, and research has shown that shaking hands with someone or giving someone a high five, just the action of reaching over and shaking hands with someone, giving that a high five, is enough to stimulate oxytocin release, and that lowers cortisol levels and lowers stress and anxiety.
And see, now that you say that, and this is whether it's subconscious or whatever, at the start of every game I've ever played at a tournament, for whatever reason, I've always reached across the table and said, good luck.
Except at the moment.
Well,
because it's not allowed. And elbow bumps just feels weird.
It does. But I haven't played a tournament recently.
Yeah, no. But we've run two
but you know, there's always that good luck, like that sportsmanship.
Yeah, good game, mate.
Before the game as much as afterwards. And it's interesting that act is potentially enough to put both players at ease, or at least take the edge off of it to be able to then start the game, particularly when you're meeting someone for the first time and you don't know how they're going to respond. You don't know, what things they could say, how they're going to behave. As you're kind of feeling each other out as to what, kind of like what social standing that you what topics are okay to talk about, what's not okay to talk about, those sorts of, you're kind of feeling each other out socially. It's interesting that can essentially, that initial contact is enough to kind of go, okay, like we can relax a bit now. We're both on the same. Yeah,
and long term, so, talking about having how that moment, a moment to shake hands, a moment to give a high five is enough to stimulate the oxytocin release, and that can lower stress. Stress is linked, it's got huge morbidity and mortality issues linked to stress. So if we're looking from a health perspective, stress is linked to weight gain, it's linked to cardiovascular disease, it's linked to upper respiratory infections, it's linked to increased glucose levels. So that one act of shaking hands or giving a high five is enough to actually decrease people's risk of heart attack. Like, that's a huge claim.
It is.
And I'm not saying that somebody
just go out and high five everyone.
Obviously there's
way more factors.
There's a lot more factors, but stress is the number one killer, and something like this is enough to actually start reducing people's stress. Like, that's really huge.
Absolutely.
And there's, as I was reading about different health benefits of gaming, and I guess the different elements that I see of gaming. One of the things that it actually talked about was how it's likely to reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes.
I don't know about that.
Well, so there are links that say that people who spend time with other people are much less likely to have type 2 diabetes.
See, I think that makes sense.
Well, see, I looked at it, and when I read it, I was like, I've seen the food that we serve at events. I've seen, the chocolates and the drinks and so I'm not 100% sure that we are actually doing our bit towards decreasing the rates of type 2 diabetes. But the research actually shows that people who exercise alone are much more likely to have type 2 diabetes than people who exercise with a partner. So there's actually a link there that shows that and also the same goes that people who don't exercise but spend more time with other people, and who have the other comorbidity health issues such as poor diet, lack of exercise, they're more likely to experience type 2 diabetes if they spend more time in solitary compared to with other people.
Okay. I can kind of see that. I mean, I think there's a level of social acceptance in regards to behaviours which would change how you eat, how you drink.
And there is that, and that's one of the other things, that there's the accountability that goes with it.
Yeah, if you're by yourself on a computer with a keyboard in front of you and headphones on, it's very easy to just ignore what people are saying, or block people, close chats, all those sorts of things. If you're with someone else in a room and Well, you think about it. At the end of last year, you posted that you were trying to eat healthier and that kind of thing. Think about the amount of positive support that you got from that. That's true.
And I won't say who it is, although he did do it publicly. So somebody from Outpost, I was going to say Outpost South, there's only one Outpost. Someone from Outpost said that, I believe he was told that he was at higher risk of type 2 diabetes. I don't think he was given a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. But as a result of that, started a walking group prior to Outpost meeting every Tuesday, and again posted, and the amount of positive support that he had from that, and people meeting up and now going for that walk prior to doing some gaming, and they were talking about doing boot camp and things on the oval, but we're like, oh gosh, imagine doing boot camp and then going in and play,
and playing for 3 hours.
Yeah, let's not do that.
It'd be like gaming in the locker room after a football game.
So, and also, still staying on that thing of social interaction. So social interaction can also stimulate dopamine production. So dopamine can reduce people's pain levels. So dopamine is like a naturally produced morphine.
Clearly, I'm not producing enough of it, because at the end of the day, my lower back is killing me leaning across the table. Well,
and there's actually the physical activity that comes from having to stand up.
Yeah.
And the amount, so
knees, hips, ankles, legs.
So there are actually health benefits that come from standing, but it does come with a fair amount of pain when you haven't been practicing it. But imagine how much you'd hurt if you just stood up all day by yourself for 12 hours
I've done that.
Didn't have the dopamine being produced. So
I was younger when I did that, but I've done that. So
something to think about. Got any other thoughts around?
No, I mean, the community aspect of it, I like ignoring the physical responses that you can have from some of those things. I think the mental side of it's even more important and relevant for belonging, and like the whole act, belong, commit. Yeah,
there is, and definitely that sense of belonging has a huge positive impact on people's mental health. There's also, so there's two different kinds of isolation. There's isolation where you're actually physically isolated and you don't have connection with people. And there's isolation where you can be surrounded by people but still feel as though you're disconnected.
Yeah.
And part of that is not having any shared experiences. So one of the things that I've noticed with tabletop gaming is that a lot of the people in the room have shared experiences. So we do have a number of people who come into and share a space after experiencing PTSD, or come in with mental health issues, come in who have perhaps been veterans from armed forces or are current serving members of the Defence Force, or police force, paramedics,
first responders.
And that shared experience is not something that it's not something that you can explain. And I often think it's not something that you want to explain, but it's nice to be in a room with somebody who has that same experience and know that you don't actually need to talk about it, but the person who's across the table from you knows where you've been, knows what you've experienced, and that actually reduces that isolation as well.
So having not been part of any of that side of things personally, a lot of it for me just comes from being part of if people want to share, they can, and not judging them, and just being part of that room and that space.
Yeah.
So, we've got a number of people who we've known for a few years now who are ex-service or are current service or are current first responders, and when they're not behaving the way I would normally expect them to, then there's an opportunity there to go and, are you okay, and check in with them. And I've not once had anyone go, it's none of your fecking business, leave me alone. It's always met with
appreciation.
Yeah. Because we're not judging, we're just making sure they're okay. So, no, I think that's kind of been the biggest thing to watch, particularly some of the younger guys who are struggling to fit in at school or struggling to fit in socially, and then as they get older, they're surrounded by people who are behaving in a certain way, and I think that social benefit for them in their wider life is something that we'll never see, but is potentially there.
I definitely think that events are another place where the people who come to it have the opportunity to either be positive role models or to experience positive role models. And those, as you said, we've got people who are coming in who are younger and also people who are older, and both get the opportunity to be able to either be a role model or experience a role model.
Yeah.
So, and part of that role modeling is how to interact with peers, how to make small talk, how to shake hands. And I think that what's interesting is as I've got older in my professional life, so where I started out, I was the youngest person in the organisation and everybody else was in their 50s when I started there, and I was 21. So I was very much the youngest person there, and now I'm very much not the youngest person there.
No, but you're not the oldest either.
I'm not the oldest.
You're probably the mid-ground now.
I am in the middle, yeah. But what's been interesting is watching, as the 17 years that I've been there have sort of moved on, watching people go, do I have to use the phone or can I just send an email? And now it's, do I have to send an email? Can I just send a text? And and I think because people don't get to practice actually talking to people.
Yeah. So
this gives an opportunity where you actually learn how to make small talk. You learn how to have a chat without kind of there being that extra pressure, because I'm not sitting across the table from you, looking deep into your eyes, needing for you to have this, have this connection, because actually I'm just looking at the little men that's on the table, but we can have a bit of a skirting conversation at the same time. But we don't need to if that's not comfortable either.
We see that a lot with career choices as well these days. I saw it training new sales staff, where certainly the younger generations are more likely to go, oh, cool, I've got to do cold calls. Here's 100 emails.
Yeah.
And because they don't understand necessarily how to have those conversations. And I suppose part of it's also to do with rejection and
failure.
Yeah. How to handle that in front of someone.
That's really important as well. I think we're working in an environment where it's not okay to fail.
Yeah.
And this is actually an opportunity to show that not only is it okay to fail, it's safe to fail, and it's safe to try. And
how you respond to that failure is important as well, and how to behave in an appropriate manner.
And that's modelled all the time.
Yeah.
And you see what happens when inappropriate behaviour is modelled and other people in the room pull them up on it.
Yeah.
When somebody is not behaving well, but having that opportunity to watch how other people step in and go, that's not okay.
Yeah.
There's often not many women in the room, but it gives people that safe place to practice being respectful towards women.
Yeah, that's true.
So, all of those things. Anything else from you?
No, you can keep going with your notes.
That's all right. Just if you've got some others, we can go with those and we'll just come back
keep
to
going.
mine.
It's fine.
So another positive is, and this is not, so that's probably most of the ones that I had around actually going to events or playing, that was mostly around the going to events. Obviously some of those are still relevant for one-on-one or, and obviously they're the same for going to clubs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But actually just playing the game, there's protective factors there for neurodegeneration.
Basically making you concentrate and keeping you sharp.
So social interaction and social contact in themselves can actually improve memory formation and recall and helps ward off the neurodegeneration. But the game itself acts as brain training.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense to me. I can look at a table and calculate probabilities and odds and statistics and recalls, and I'm not right all the time because there's too many additions in my brain, but yeah, like I can definitely see the benefits, particularly from the maths and associated disciplines that attach to that, because as soon as you start using dice and probability and measurements and angles and that sort of stuff.
And you look at all of the things, it's sort of big at the moment, or it has been for probably the last 5-ish years, around brain training for older adults.
Yeah.
And how that's used to ward off dementia. There's in how it's important to do crossword puzzles and number puzzles and word puzzles, things like that.
Yeah.
And there's research that says that dancing is likely to reduce your chances of having dementia or Alzheimer's, because learning the different patterns is likely to decrease your chances there. That's what this game is. It's all about patterns.
Yeah. Well, it's numbers,
it's word, it's language, it's strategies. All of those things are constantly building those neural pathways and keeping those neural pathways healthy and developed.
Yeah. Okay.
So, so that's it's all adding to our neurological health, really. I say our, not really mine, but that's okay.
No, you play maybe
I
not.
do play some of them. That's
Yeah.
all good. I've got this in the middle. I really feel like I should either have this as a beginning one or an end one, but it's in the middle of my notes, so I'm just going to jump on there. Happiness seems like a pretty important one. This actually, playing the game makes people happy. It brings people joy.
I think the key phrase from that is it makes them happy, but for why it makes them happy can be different for other people.
100%. That's it.
If it brings you joy because you get to just hang out with your friends and be part of something bigger, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
If you enjoy the competition, that's completely fine. If you enjoy the hobby side of it and seeing it all on the table and the result isn't a problem, that's fine as well. Like, there's a whole raft of ways you can gain happiness from the hobby.
And being happy, that's an ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
There is so much negativity, there's so much stress, there's so much sadness, there's so much awfulness in the world. If something makes you happy and brings you joy, do more of it.
Yeah.
And one of the activities that, not that I do many workshops at the moment, but or recently, but for one of the workshops that I do around self-care, is about list 5 of the activities of your life that bring you most joy. Now list 5 of the activities that you do most often. How often do you think those two lists
numbers
are the same?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you they're not. So if the 5 things that bring you most joy include sculpting, painting, playing, why are you not doing it more often?
Yeah.
Because if you are happier, you are going to be a nicer person to be around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always good to still go to work.
Well, work-life balance needs to be a thing.
It does, yeah.
But
Because if you don't go to work, you can't afford to buy more plastic toys.
I think if one of your top 5, or ideally 2 of your top 5 things that you do most often mirror across.
Oh, look, I mean, there's arguments and discussion around how you can actually find ways that what you get paid to do brings you joy.
Yeah.
And if what you're doing, if you hate your job and it makes you miserable, is it worth looking at doing something else?
Yeah.
It's time to make some big life changes. Or can you keep doing that and the other 4 things that you do most often become what makes you, so that you get that work-life balance?
Yeah.
So all of that. But really, I just kind of wanted to say, if it makes you happy, do it.
Yeah.
Probably, as I said, should be a beginning or end point, but we're doing it in the middle.
Fair enough.
We spoke about, in a conversation that we had at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, that's not a lockdown, that was restriction or whatever it was, about different ways to cope with anxiety in that particular period.
There was actually an episode we did on it.
Yes, that was what I was just saying.
You said earlier in that you didn't say episode. I'm just going to try and find the number of the episode.
Okay.
Go
I'm
on.
going to guess 65.
It's probably not far off.
Might be 67. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm guessing 65. So in that we spoke about mindfulness and...
Because I listened, I've got a spreadsheet.
Oh, look at you with your spreadsheet. And we did talk about repetitive motion and things like and art and how
Episode 65, Quarantine and Mental Health, is what my notes say for it.
Right, awesome. So go back and listen to that one because that had some positives in it about how gaming can actually be good for your mental health as well. But the painting and sculpting is really good for mindfulness. So there's, again, probably about 10 years ago, a sort of craze swept around mindful colouring and
like adult colouring
for adults.
books. Yeah.
Yeah. And part of that was actually it was just about mindfulness. It's about focusing on one thing and only one thing, and that being the thing that's in front of you, and being able to stop everything else that your body is focused on and being able to just do the colouring. That's the same thing with painting and sculpting and building models. So because everything else stops as you're focused on that. And, you know, a hobby in itself is self-care. And self-care is something that's often bandied about as a marketing tool aimed at women. It's not generally, I don't think, thrown towards suggesting that men should participate in self-care more often. But I'm not a man, so do you experience a lot of a whole heap of marketing towards men and self-care? No. It's normally around, you know, women need self-care. Buy this new pair of leggings that are $90, and if you actually run in them, they melt. That's not what they say in the descriptor, but it is what happens. Or, you know, self-care, buy this face mask, or self-care, you know, it shouldn't be about, anyway, I'm likely to get on a tangent there, but self-care is really important. So I'm not a doctor, and if you're a doctor and listening to this, just ignore this bit and tune back in 5 minutes, okay? So you got the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, sympathetic nervous system is our fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, in states of stress, our sympathetic nervous system it's under a whole heap of stress, because it's active all the time, because we're in this heightened state of kind of, you know, what's going to happen? How do I need to respond here? But our parasympathetic nervous system is where all the healing actually happens. So if you are somebody who, I could be looking at someone who is quite accident prone, our body heals when our parasympathetic nervous system is firing and our sympathetic nervous system is relaxed. But our parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for crying, it's responsible for urination, it's responsible for, I've written dedication, but I do mean defecation. It's responsible for libido, it's responsible for sexual performance. So all of those things are, I keep twisting my chair and I must be knocking something because you keep looking at me and it's really weird and it's distracting, okay? So just leave the banner will be fine.
It's bothering me.
So when we're able to actually relax, that's when our body can heal, and that's when we're likely to be looking at having health benefits from it.
So move your freaking chair so I can relax. Thank you.
How's that? Okay. So self-care is important.
I feel self-cared already.
and art is it's a really good way of actually, you know, that creativity and all, you know, that ability to concentrate, that's really important for actually looking after ourselves and looking after our health.
Yeah, I can see that. I go through phases where I like to build stuff. One of the trickiest parts is balancing those moments of self-care, for a descriptor. In the hobby, I find building is easier to slot into my day than painting.
Yeah, okay, so I hear you say that. But I also saw you sitting on the couch for an hour playing on a game.
It was not an hour.
It was.
It was not.
It was. So I think that perhaps it's very easy for you to feel like we're really busy, but actually if we weren't on our iPad, maybe there would be more time available. But I really like playing that game that really annoys you.
Which one?
Let me narrow it down for you.
Come join me on Dead by Daylight Mobile.
Okay. Oh, okay. These are just dot points.
I'm gaming. It's made my mental health benefits.
It's not looking after my mental health, and there's all of this social stuff that we've been talking about is definitely not on there. When you just, yeah. A connection with other, so generally people who play this game are men, so connection with other men. Connection, it enhances multitasking skills. Now, I do believe that there's not enough monofocusing happening, but that's generally in women. So in men, there's a lot of monofocusing if you go by stereotypes. So enhancing multitasking is always a positive if you're selling this to a significant other.
I don't know how you'd sell it, though. I don't understand how that functions, because we've just said that it allows you to self-care and focus on one thing.
Okay.
And then in the same breath, you're saying it.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I'm talking about actually playing the game allows multitasking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Look, knowing where your snack is, knowing where your drink is, and knowing which dice to roll while playing the game is a very, very important sequence of events.
Okay, I feel as though perhaps you're missing something there. And yes, there is being able to buy a drink and knowing where the Maltesers are and whose turn it is. But there's also looking at the board and working out the strategy for where you think that your opponent is, what they're likely to be aiming towards. And then while looking at the different strategies that you're going to employ and what objectives you're hoping to achieve in this turn, but also for the game overall. So you're not only watching what's happening, you're also thinking about the next step ahead. So you are actually having to think about multiple things at once.
Okay.
You said okay and rolled your eyes.
I didn't roll my eyes.
That felt almost like multitasking, but it did not feel as like the words and the body language were
only because
matching.
The way you make that sound is there's a conscious process there.
And I think that for new players there is. I think that when you've got players who have been playing for 5, 10, 25 years, perhaps that is less of a conscious process. But multitasking is obviously less of a conscious process.
I suppose that's true.
It's being able to cook dinner while looking after the kids and folding the washing and, answering the telephone and quickly firing off an email.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I'll give you that one now.
That's kind of you. I appreciate it.
Look, I'm multitasking right now. I'm watching all the audio levels while chatting to you.
And thinking about the game that you talked about. And speaking of, it improves attention and concentration.
Yeah, okay. Just not at the end of a long day of gaming.
Even at the end of a long day of gaming. So we used to talk about people having a Sesame Street attention span, which meant that people had an attention span for about 20 minutes. Because that's about how long an average Sesame Street episode went for. Now we talk about people having a play school attention span, which is 3 to 5 minutes. So your average person can sit and concentrate for 3 to 5 minutes. That's it. I cannot fathom the idea of playing a game of a full 2,000 point game of 40k because the thought of having to concentrate for 3 hours, I don't have the capacity to do it. Now, that's based on the stresses that I have and that kind of thing. I cannot put aside 3 hours in order to do it, but I couldn't concentrate for that amount of time. So what this does is it builds people's attention span. And generally, you don't start with playing a 2,000 point game. You'd start with a 500 point or 1,000 point game and build up. And you don't start by playing, well, some people start by coming to Masters and playing 6 or 8 games over 2 days. But most people don't start with that. They start by playing a game in their garage or a game at a local club or at a friend's house for a couple of hours. And then they build up to playing for, a longer period of time. But it's building that attention span so that you can actually concentrate for that full 3 hours. Anyone who's been to uni knows you cannot sit in a lecture and concentrate for 3 hours.
So you're saying that gamers would be better at university?
No, I'm saying that they're much more likely to be engaged in a game of tabletop gaming than they are sitting in a biostats.
I was just thinking to myself, I know a lot of gamers who did go to university, and I'm very, very certain there's a correlation between how many classes they missed and how many games were being played.
Yeah, and I know a fair few people where I brought up biostats because prior to my biostats seminars, I had beverage appreciation, which was an actual class, and I got a HD in beverage appreciation, and I scraped through with a pass with biostats.
That's because they were giving you Long Island iced teas at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Was, yes. So, yeah, I think there's an inverse kind of proportion of people who are passing their uni things and people who are spending time in the TAV. But that's not my point. My point is that it's difficult to concentrate. And, if you're looking at it for teenagers, it's difficult to concentrate for 3 hours. Teenagers who are likely to be going into university who have to sit in lectures for 3 hours, build their concentration skills. Gaming is one way to do it.
I suppose I'm in this weird spot where a lot of the gaming side of my brain is learned behaviour. So,
and the only way you get there is by practicing.
Yeah, I know, but and that's why I'm you're going, oh, it's improved, and I can say at the end of the day, I can drive home and then go, no, I need to switch my brain off. It's been a very long day, but it never feels like it during the games, mentally speaking.
No, and I find that it doesn't matter how many games that we have or how long a day or a weekend or or event is. The last game of every event, everyone is exhausted.
Yeah. Because there's a mental hurdle there which says I've just got to get through the next couple of hours and we're done.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, and whether that's game 3 in a 3-game 1-day event or game 8 on a 2-day 8-game, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That last game, everyone is smashed.
We do get the odd, like Masters in 2019, there were people at the end of game 5 going, oh, that's it, we're done. I've gone, no.
We've still got one more
6.
game. Yeah.
Oh my God, are you serious? Yes,
Yeah.
I'm serious. There's one more game. Oh, I thought I was done.
I know. Imagine if they'd read the player's pack. That's one thing that I haven't managed to... that attention to detail is... I'm sure it should be there as a positive, but nobody seems to be able to read the damn player's pack.
I know that we do actually have some really astute, particularly in the patrons group, because I wrote this player's pack, and a few of them have pulled me up and gone, hey, you forgot this, or you forgot that, or did you actually mean this? And I've gone, they're reading it.
Yeah.
For the most part, anyway, they are. There's a few that I've got messages from that, hey, can I do this? No, you can't. It's in the player's pack. Oh, okay. So, which will all set to change very shortly for 40k at least.
Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts on why this is good?
I think when you're talking about it with your significant other, whether they are a new relationship or an existing relationship or whatnot, I think so I'm going to use a case study
Okay.
Of a hobbyist returning to the hobby.
Okay, before you do, let me just put in, it also improves ability to learn and cognitive and creative skills. There we go, that's right, you finished you doing this case study now.
Now, this particular person I knew through outside of gaming, had no contact with him in the gaming community, and it just happens that he knows someone who is coming to our tournaments. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to use his name because I don't know whether he's okay with me doing that. And he started following our Facebook Lives and those sorts of things. And I was joking with him because we have a connection outside of the hobby. You have to get back into it again. I haven't played since I was a teenager, and that was 20 plus years ago now. And he sent me a message not that long ago, within the last month, saying, yeah, so this happened. I went into one of the Perth stores and walked out $300 lighter with all these paints and these models, and there's this and there's that. And then today he sent me a photo of his first model he's painted in years. And before that, I was kind of chatting to him about painting and stuff, and I said to him, look, I'm not I'm not the best painter by a significant margin. There are some amazing artists in Perth, and one of them is a mate of yours. So if you want painting tips, go and talk to them. And he said, no. Like, I just need to get back into it and, you know.
Yeah.
And he sent me a photo of his first model he finished. A Space Marine painted in Ultramarines blue with all the Ultramarines colours. And I said to him, see, it's just like riding a bike. And we were chatting a little bit about it. And
I was going to say it's not quite as healthy as riding a bike, but we've just found out how healthy it is.
yeah.
Who needs to jog when this? You just need to high five someone, apparently. That is not the health message for you to take away.
No. Certainly
My
not at the
health
moment either.
promotion officer in me is...
During COVID.
Yeah.
So I said, you know, we were kind of chatting a bit, and he was saying his partner had also like come with him, and you know, and that can often be an interesting one where you'll see mums or girlfriends or wives or significant others, however you want to label them, who aren't gamers, stood outside the store or with a bored or impatient look on their face, or...
And in all fairness, it's
a whole new world.
It's not even a whole new world. I am often the only woman in those stores.
That is true.
Now, 90% of the people in the store know me and will come and chat with me.
Yeah.
But when we were...
Not in the early days.
No.
Yeah.
And, you know, way back in the very early days with Jason and Luke at Simo Rain Square. Well, I was thinking Jason and Luke because they both had significant others, and so there would be the three of us girls who would sort of...
Yeah, that's true.
Hang out and talk about ice cream. But, you know... But that was a really long time ago. And then there was this, you know, Jason obviously moved and Luke changed jobs. And then there was this massive period where, I'd be the only one.
Yep.
And you'd go in and often it's not now, but, you know, you'd go in and often the stores would smell bad. And so you know why the girls are standing out the front.
Yeah, so it's like a woman going. It's a woman going shoe shopping, and the bloke sat outside carrying the bags.
Yeah,
same thing. I know that's grossly.
It really is
Exaggerating and grossly.
Yeah, it is. But we'll let it slide.
Yeah. But she apparently his partner has shown interest in painting, so she picked out an Eldar model. So I can already appreciate her taste. And I think. Obviously, I don't know her motivations for saying, yeah, okay, I'll have a crack at this, whether she's genuinely interested, whether she's trying to share a hobby with her partner, whether she's always had an interest in it and, you know, maybe she, like him, was interested in it when she was at a different point in her life and now since he's getting back into it, she is. I don't know any of that. But I feel like there's a really good sort of situation there where he's gone, you know what, I actually want to do this. She's gone along and she's been involved in that. And I think that's a really positive relationship scenario there where they're sharing something and there's no negativity there. It's no, I had to buy this and bring it home so she didn't see it type stuff.
Yeah, well, we do talk about that. You try and sneak things down through the back gate.
But now it's different. There's a different reason for sneaking it in.
Why is it different?
Because now I'm not trying to hide it from you because I do it. I'm trying to hide it from you so you don't yell at me for the credit card bill.
One load of rubbish.
That is true. You don't check the credit card bill. I'm the one who pays it.
It doesn't, you know.
No, it doesn't. But it doesn't bother you in the first place.
No, it doesn't. And I suppose
as long as I'm sensible.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, as long as we can afford to eat, then it's all good. But I'm sure that we should be having a deeper. Oh, I did want to talk about the positives of it from a parenting perspective. You know, if you are wanting to homeschool your kids and using this as a tool for homeschooling, but I think that might
we'll
be
do
a
another
discussion
episode
later on. I feel like we should be having a deeper conversation around what it means for a relationship if somebody is that adamant about changing someone and not letting your partner play something that brings you joy. Like I personally struggle with the idea of somebody not letting you do something.
Yeah. And obviously relationships have to be two-way streets, but at the same time, if you've got a hobby that is something you enjoy doing, and it is obviously a choice, hobbies are always a choice, and your partner then says, no, you can't do that.
It makes you feel guilty for doing it, or...
Yeah, it feels like there's something else going on there that's not healthy for either of you.
Yeah, and I get it. when obviously we've got, I'm just like, who is this episode for? Is this a patrons episode? Is it not? No, it's not. We've got a patron who chose not to play in the patron pods over the last couple of weeks because he's got a 2-week-old baby.
Yeah, fair call.
Like, fair call. If you've got new baby or there's a baby on the way or, everything's gearing up to a wedding or,
Work-life balance.
That's it.
Yeah.
Or, you do FIFO and you haven't seen your family in however long. That's really different to my new partner doesn't like that I play.
Therefore, I'm not going to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about it in terms of relationships should be making you happy as well.
Mm.
And
just to share another case study. So I was the celebrant for one of the gamers who comes to quite a few of our events for his wedding with his partner. And so the first time that I met his now wife, we were having a chat and so I'm talking about hobby and all of this kind of stuff. And he did say that for the first however long of their relationship, he did try and keep it a secret. So he had all of his hobby in one room and he'd just like quickly run into the house and make sure that room, the door was shut and all of that. But it's not a hobby that you can keep a secret.
I just keep thinking, you imagine her for that first little while going, what the hell is behind that door?
In that room?
Like, what the hell kink is behind that door? What, like, is there a murder scene back there? Like, what's going on? Like, that's almost worse. I say almost. Yeah, it's... I get that, particularly if you've been hobbying for a long time as a teenager and there's a lot of social stigmas attached to it when you're at school and you want to fit in and you want to be part of... It's easier when you're a teenager to fit in than it is to stand out.
Why fit in when you were born to stand out?
As a teenager, that's a hard line to walk, and not many do. And I think that self-protection can transition into your 20s and beyond when you're used to this thing being a negative force in the wider community. So you and your mates, it's fine. You can chat about it at lunch and you can play games on the weekends. But when other people in this school community hear about it, it can be a negative thing. So obviously as you transition into later life, it can still feel the same way. And
I think, you know that I'm a hippie. So this is going to sound a bit hippie, but there's the whole your vibe attracts your tribe and finding your people. So and I think that's something else that actually this hobby does. It allows people an opportunity to find their people, to find where they fit. And I think, as you say, when people are finding out who they are, I feel like people are coming out of the closet as a closet nerd. But, when people finding out who they are, it's really reassuring to walk into a room with 100 other people from all different walks of life who all play the same game.
Yeah.
Like, that's really... It gets rid of all of those stereotypes and prejudice that go around what gaming actually is. To walk into a room and go, I'm not the only one that plays this game. I'm not the only one that finds this enjoyable or fun. And it's not a room full of stereotypical whatever.
I think the wider exposure in the media, particularly since the Marvel movies from the late 2000s all through to the present, has changed a little bit of public perception around what geek and nerd culture looks like. Things like the TV series The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
That's spun it in a negative light, don't get me wrong, but at least what it's done is bring some of that stuff into the public mind in terms of people, like there are adults who read comic books and geek out to movies and play computer games, and while that particular series didn't necessarily shed that in the most flattering light, it's still highlighted that there is a community out there for it, and it's made those comic book stores and game stores sort of a bit more visible to the average person who walks past and sees a logo and goes, oh yeah, I've seen The Lord of the Rings, or I watched Iron Man, or anything like that.
Yeah,
and that's only getting better because we are going to start seeing more and more stuff from Games Workshop in regards to their media presence. They've tried a few times and failed with movies and stuff, but I've lost track of how many gamers have told me that their first interaction with Games Workshop games was actually Dawn of War on the PC. It was literally Game of the Year it was released. It was the best-selling retail real-time strategy game.
Yeah.
And people went from that game and went, "Hey, this is a cool game. Oh, look, they made a board game of this."
Yeah.
And then discovered, oh, you know what? It's actually the other way around, and now they've been playing for 20 years. Maybe not 20, but yeah.
I find it interesting what you're talking about with the comic book stores and thinking about in Perth. And I will admit that we recorded the beginning part of this episode in the middle of the day, and now we're recording it quite late at night after 3 very strong alcoholic beverages. So I apologise. But, thinking about it with this idea of kind of this culture being underground, and which made me think that actually if you think about some of the big stores in Perth, they are literally underground.
Well, yeah, Tactics is quite literally under the main street of the CBD.
Yeah, which so I quite like that the Games Workshop stores aren't.
They're in the main
not
malls.
Seedy. They're clean, they're bright, they're in the main shopping centres, they're socially acceptable, they're socially accessible.
Particularly the Morley and the CBD Perth stores.
Yeah.
In main high traffic shopping malls.
Yeah, Freo you do definitely. No, Baldivis is pretty. That's pretty accessible.
Well, it's across the road from one of the shopping malls.
With other shops kind of on either side of it as well.
Fremantle and Joondalup are a little bit tucked
They're
away.
A bit out of the way. Are there any other stores that I forgot?
No, that's the 5 of them.
Okay. So, yeah, but they're quite accessible, and they're not, they're not underground. But also, I don't know for other people listening, but for me, there was kind of this, oh my God, it's on TV. You know, when the Conquest magazines were being advertised, like to see Warhammer advertised on TV.
Yeah.
It was really...
It was a bit strange.
It was. And, so now I don't go into news agencies very often because there's hardly any around. But on the rare occasion when I do go in and see a Conquest magazine sitting there, it does feel, I don't know, like there's that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Because it's actually out in public. And so that... I think that will help with perceptions as well.
I still remember that when I first started gaming, the 3 major stores in Perth were Simulations, Valhalla, and Tactics. Mm-hmm. Tactics is the only one still around. Tactics at the time were upstairs of a mall in the CBD, and it was a mall that was nowhere near the main shopping precinct, and it was a well-lit store, but if you didn't know it was there and you were going, you went into Perth looking for it, you'd never find it.
Yeah.
It was... in a mall that didn't have a lot of traffic, and so it was a destination. Valhalla, I have many dodgy memories of Valhalla because it was the original store that I went to was this dark staircase with no light that you had to traipse upstairs to an attic above a proper store, and the stairway up was only wide enough for one person. So if there were people coming down and people coming up, you had to give way at the intersection, and it was crowded and dark, and it got better when they renovated, and then it disappeared when they put in the new train station. But again, there was no real external signage. If you didn't know it was there, And it was funny because when I first went to Valhalla, I didn't realise that Valhalla was literally 30 feet from the other store, Simulations, which was upstairs. But
and I mean, that's kind of got some appeal. I've been to an absolutely amazing whiskey place. It's really similar.
Yeah. But all 3 of those stores for that era, they weren't public, they weren't visible, they were tucked away, and we want to be in the city because that's where you need to be, because at the time, online shopping didn't exist.
Online didn't exist.
No, exactly. So it made sense to be in the CBD.
Yeah.
And...
but CBD is really expensive, and this is quite a niche hobby.
Yeah, so they had to find a space where they could afford. Those, when you think back to those, and even the Games World stores that used to stock it, which are now much more close to board games and mainstream pop culture type stuff.
Yeah, so you go into Games World and you ask about some of this stuff, and you don't get a very good
they're not gamers, they're retail staff.
Yeah,
whereas game stores actually tend to have gamers in them. But I remember the old Games World in Carousel where the store space was 3 metres square.
Yeah.
It was tiny. But he had a huge range of Warhammer that he kept out the back. So if you went looking for something, he would probably have it. And, going between the 3 stores to try and get exactly what you needed, or 4 stores, or, catching the train in and having to do that each day because we didn't have anywhere to play. And now the stores are way more visible, which obviously pushes the rent up because they are in more visible locations, which means there's no gaming spaces in a lot of them.
Yeah.
Tactics being a weird exception because there's probably gaming space there, but...
there is in that little
Yeah.
bottom bit. When you just get to the bottom of the stairs, there's that gaming
I know
area.
they've got more that they now use for storage, but that's probably the remnants of that era where they're tucked away and, it's a bit gloomy, although it's gotten way better over the years with them, making sure that you can find products and organising the store. And
I'm still afraid to go down there. I'm so worried if I breathe out too deeply, I'm going to knock a whole shelf over and I'll be buried under there forever.
There are a lot of products down there. But the culture has moved on, not just the gaming culture, but the one surrounding it and the public. And the fact that it is more visible, I think the stigma is slowly disappearing, which is going to make it easier for people going forward to rejoin or join anew.
Yeah.
And that's all positive. So, yeah, hopefully there's some information there that if you are having to give the pitch to a partner.
Well, even without giving a pitch to a partner, I still think that it's kind of it's interesting to take that step back and see that playing a game with toy soldiers is actually more than just 2 people playing a tabletop game.
Yeah.
There is so much more that goes into it that you don't even think about. It's just kind of an added perk of it.
Yeah.
Nobody goes to a tabletop gaming event with the intention that, hey, if I shake hands, I'm going to get this boost and, that's going to be great for reducing my stress levels. And, nobody goes with that being the sole purpose of attending.
No.
But that boost of serotonin and boost of dopamine has added health benefits, which, I don't know, I just think it's kind of interesting to know.
Yeah. Okay. We got anything else to cover? Or shall we take a break?
I think that's probably it.
Okay. So, yeah, hopefully you've gleaned some information out of this that should your significant other ask any questions about...
He keeps going back to the significant other.
Well, that's what we're talking about for this episode.
Yeah.
If you want to try and explain it to someone, some of the added benefits of gaming, partner or otherwise, hopefully there's some useful stuff here for you. But in the meantime, we'll take a break and we'll be back to wrap up the episode in just a second.
Okay, so before we get started with the so while he was doing the save for the end of the main topic before we come into recording this, he looks at me with excited eyes. Do you know when we get to episode 100? Me. No. August next year. Great. I'll look forward to that. Dork.
That's what happens when you leave me to my own devices to try and figure things out and plan things. I was putting notes in the spreadsheet for the next few episodes and what we can talk about, trying to figure out when the 9th edition episode needs to slot in.
Yeah.
Which looks to be episode 72, 73, 74, somewhere in that space.
Or probably 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, could very well be. Who knows?
Yeah.
But that's roughly where it's going to sit in the next month or so.
Yeah.
And then, I just kind of went, I wonder. Oh, look, it makes sense when we do one a fortnight and there's 26 fortnights in the year and, basic mathematics.
Great. So if, like me, and you were waiting with bated breath to find out when episode 100 is, it's August next year. Gosh. All right.
Fine.
Do we have
spot?
I'm not spoiling any sport. I'm sharing it with people
Yeah, making
who are
fun of
likely
me.
to be just as excited as I am. Have you got anything to share for our closing comments?
I have to say thank you again to parts of the community, JD, Vincent, Chris, a whole bunch of the guys when I was asking a couple of months ago before, or sort of in the COVID period, for Harlequin parts.
Yeah.
I finally caught up with Vince at our Patrons Pod tournament, and he brought down some sprues and some clippers and went, take what you want.
Oh.
And that was awesome because he actually had 3 very specific components from one of the kits that I had traded off to give to help someone else and didn't realize I needed. So I was able to get those. And then during the week, JD was driving past and dropped his entire bits box off for me and said, take whatever it is you need.
And bring the rest back next week for the
And
event.
I sent him back a message that night saying, yeah, you should not have left this with me because you may just get back an empty box if you'd say, take what I like. So I'm going to take the bits I asked for, and then I'm going to take 2 of this gun and 1 of that and 1 of that. Is that okay? And he's gone, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to empty that box for Necron parts anyway. And I've gone, you need to stop saying things like that, JD, because I will just empty the box and keep it all, because there's a whole bunch of stuff here I could use and I might use, but that's not a good reason for me to empty a bits box.
It's not.
I should clarify, it is just his Eldar bits box, so it's basically Harlequin parts with a smattering of Craft World bits in it. And that's my jam. So when I saw this and it was nothing like that, nothing else in there, I just went, oh, cool. Like I can, there's that, I used my one of those for that conversion, or I used that bit for this.
Or I gave that bit to somebody else because I didn't need it.
Yeah. So that was really cool of them to help me out and make sure I've got the bits I need to finish some of these squads, which I can't do until I get 9th because I don't know how many points things are. What has also been really interesting for me in regards to 9th edition is I'm a member of the Splintermind patrons group. And if you haven't listened to Splintermind, it's a podcast focused on mainly Drukhari, but they do a lot of Eldar stuff. And I've been a guest a couple of times to talk about Harlequins and Craftworld. And so they've got a patrons group, and they're playtesters for Games Workshop. Now, they are unashamedly more focused on the narrative side of things and telling stories and that sort of stuff. They're really keen for the Crusade. But one of the hosts, Alex, has been sharing a daily thought in the patrons group about what he's seen. So he waits until they publish the latest preview on the community site, and then he either has it ready or he already has thought. Like he clearly knows that it's coming, because there's like a 5 to 7 paragraph post explaining what he likes about what they've previewed. So it's been interesting to read, and there's nothing in there that's breaking NDAs or anything like that, because he's only referencing what they've said. But it's been interesting seeing his vague references to what he thinks about the new rules and how it's going to interact with the game. And between him and Brian, I really trust both of their opinions in regards to the game, because despite us running tournaments and me unashamedly being a tournament player, I share a lot in common with both the guys in regards to the hobby at large. So, between them and Lawrence from Tabletop Tactics and the team at Tabletop Tactics who've also been playtesting, there's a lot of good vibes that I get from these guys saying, you're going to like this. So it's been really cool having those that'll pop up in my Facebook feed every day or two when he posts his next sort of batch of thoughts. So if you're interested in checking out Eldar podcasts and stuff, I'm sure they'll have an episode much like us for the release of 9th, but there's obviously Eldar focused. Splintermind, although I know they're having problems with hosting at the moment, they're having to transition stuff and change YouTube links and not YouTube, iTunes links and all that sort of stuff, because they had an issue with how the RSS feeds and all that sort of stuff was set up. So they're messing around. So if you can't find any of the past episodes, just be patient.
We are, speaking of patron things, we're intending to add some more things for our patrons page if you're on there. So we did another drive time jabber today. We're going to be trying to do those a bit more often, since we're sort of sharing a car at the moment. We're spending a lot more time in the car again. So I'm thinking
we need to go and spend $20 and get a mount for the windscreen to hold the camera.
Are you suggesting that I'm not doing a good...
I'm suggesting that very much so. I'll outright say it. You're doing a terrible job with framing.
Why?
Because I was in the frame today while I was driving and they could see your nose just dipping into the frame.
That's my favourite feature of me. I love my nose.
You've got a lovely nose, but it doesn't do anything when that's all you can see of
But
you.
the rest of my face looked really, really dodgy. So
you made sure that my morning hair was in the frame. That was great. Thanks
yes,
very
I
much.
did. I did that on purpose.
I know you did.
And I shared my favourite Jack
I
Nicholson
know you did.
photo. Oh dear.
Anyway.
So I did that on purpose. I don't see a problem with my framing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
That's why I'm going to go and buy a car mount tomorrow for it.
Why?
So
anyway,
you can be in the frame as well.
I don't need to be in the frame. That's fine. So we're doing that. I did suggest I would like to do some 10 in 10 where we do some 10 quick questions that we answer in 10 minutes, and then we realise that neither of us have the ability to answer one question in 10 minutes.
Nothing succinctly, no.
No. We could try.
Well, we have to get 10 questions first. So if you've got any questions you'd like to see us answer.
And if one of those is about chess clocks, I swear I will break all the models off the legs of your whatever toy soldiers you're playing with, Earl. Okay, just saying. Because you and me got a problem.
Look, at this point in time, I'm okay with this as a scenario. I've already said to Earl I support his opinion. And if he wants to take that up with you, I said to him on the weekend, I said, it's not me you have to convince. You can take it up with my partner and associate and convince her. Chess clocks are coming.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
No, they're not.
I wrote the players pack. You wouldn't even know it was in there. So...
Do you think?
I think that we're going to see what 9th edition brings before we get too hung up on that just yet.
A very good idea.
We've still got to manage the hurdle of changing the board from 48 inches to 44 inches. Heaven forbid.
That can be our first question.
There's my answer.
On that bombshell,
no
matter what size board you choose to play on, happy gaming, everyone.
You've been listening to the Objective Secured podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can visit our website, objectivesecured.com.au. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Objective Secured, or you can email us, obsec@optusnet.com.au. Thanks for listening.